Good afternoon. It's hump day and it's 4:30 Central. That can mean only one thing. It's time for the Dental Profit Webinar Series. Stay with us. And welcome back to the Dental Profits Webinar Series, where we come to you live each week just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, talking about ways for you to have happier clients, better results, making more money, but most of all, enjoying the ride. Today, I want to talk about one of the most important topics that we can talk about, and it's maximizing your marketing dollars. Let's think about this. You're spending dollars with some sort of marketing company, right? Whether that's an SEO company, whatever that may be, you're spending dollars to have patients contact your office. How do you maximize those dollars? I can tell you, well, let me throw a stat at you first of all before I tell you that. To be able to maximize those dollars, let's take a look at first where it is that we are. Now, this is a very unofficial sort of stat, but it's one that we've compiled over the last 20 plus years, and basically this is it. I'm going to round it up and call it 20%, but it's actually about 19%. 19% is what we've discovered after tracking offices from Vancouver to Barbados and Nassau in the Bahamas to the Great Lakes over the last 20 plus years. What we've learned is that only about 19% of the patients that contact your office actually turn into patients. Now, when you compare that with the fact that our other stat is that about 20% before practices start implementing all the things that we talk about on this channel and our closed Facebook channel, some of the other channels that we do on social media, before they implement all of those things in terms of what happens chairside and with the financial and all of those things that create value, we find that out of that 19% of the patients that actually become patients, only about 20% of those are you converting into actual fully accepted treatment plans. So let's think about that. 19% of the patients that are contacting your office are turning into patients. Out of those, there is Eric Wendell, my lovely wife. There's Jennifer Steins, Julie D'Amato, my friend Julie, and Dana. So glad you guys are joining us today. Any questions, concerns, or challenges that you have, please ask it right here. Mr. Producer has got me set up so that I can watch you guys with any questions or concerns or challenges that you might have. Please ask and I'll cover it. So let's think about this now. About 19% of the patients that are contacting your office are actually turning into patients seen. Out of those 19% of the patients that we're actually seeing, only about 20% of those are turning into fully accepted patients with fully accepted treatment plans. This is a huge, huge, huge opportunity. I want to tell you a story about this in just a second, but I have to tell you that over the last 21 years, I have learned that everybody wants to get more new patients. They're already spending dollars marketing for those new patients. Instead of addressing the real issues, like what we're going to talk about in a moment, they want to spend more dollars to go get more new patients and pile onto the problem. Listen, this is not the problem. The problem is your marketing company is doing the job. At the end of the day, you're paying the marketing company to have the phone ring. What happens after the phone is answered is totally up to us, the people on the team. If you want to really maximize the dollars that you're currently spending to go get those patients to contact the office, there's three things I want to tell you. The number one thing is, the big takeaway here is this: you got to perfect the intake call. It doesn't make any sense for you to spend dollars to have 100% of these patients call you, and only 19% of those are we actually transferring into the office. And the ones that we're transferring into the office are not properly prepared, so only about 20% of those are actually turned into patients that are being accepted. So you got to make the intake call the number one focus. Perfect the intake call. You got to perfect the intake call, and there's three things that I want to give you. They're going to help you do just that. Now, why am I talking about this? I'm actually talking about this because this is not a problem strictly for you in dentistry. This is a problem across the board. This is a problem that everybody deals with, no matter what industry or no matter what business you're in that industry. And this hit home for me over the holiday weekend. I was at a friend of mine, very close friend. He and I have known each other for 25 years. He has a third generation, I guess you would call it a small equipment shop. I don't know what else to call it. These guys sell everything from high-end motorcycle trikes, and Mr. Producer, what's the four-wheel thing you call it? It starts with a P. Polaris. I couldn't think of the name of that. He sells the high-end, fully maxed out Polarises. And he also sells all sorts of steel equipment, STIHL, chainsaws, weed eaters, bush whacker things, all that sort of stuff. Third generation. I was visiting with him over the holiday weekend, and I was in his office, and the phone rang. Nobody's getting the phone. I said, buddy, you going to get the phone? He goes, they'll get it. Okay, well, nobody got it. So right there while I'm in front of him, he takes an intake call. Okay, it's exactly the same scenario that you go through every single day. He's paid money to have the phone ring. The phone rings, and he happened to be the one to answer the call, and I got to witness this, right? Well, let me tell you, it didn't go well. Okay, that situation, Mr. Producer, did not go well, and it just so happened that I happened to be sitting across the desk as this whole train wreck happened in front of me. And so I started telling him the three things that I'm going to tell you. If you want to maximize your marketing dollars, the first thing before you get to those three steps is, as we said, you got to make perfecting the intake call a focus. If you have that as a focus and your goal is to perfect the intake call, here's what you want to do, and this is the first thing. This is the hardest thing. It's just habitual, and it takes a little practice, but you can do it, right? You can do this. Number one, stop telling and start asking. You got to break that habit. You got to break that habit. When I'm in his office, first of all, he didn't pick up the phone. He hit the speaker phone. Yes, Mr. Producer. He answered the phone in his office on the speakerphone. So, of course, there's all this noise in the background that the customer's hearing. First question out of the customer's mouth is, yes, what do you guys charge for a, whatever it was, XR60 steel chainsaw? And my buddy says, we get X number of dollars on that unit, but we've also got this unit and this unit for this price and this price, right? Terrible way to approach the call. Terrible. Because you've reduced it right to the price, and guess what? There's no value that you've had the opportunity to create, and at the end of the day, you don't even know what this particular guy is going to use this equipment for, so you don't know if the XR60 is even what he needs. The same thing happens in your office every single day. You pick up the phone. Thank you for calling Dr. So-and-so's office. Patient says, what do you charge for a crown? If you give them a price, they're going to say thank you. Call right down the list, right? You got to perfect the intake call. That's how you maximize. That's how you maximize your marketing dollars. Eric Wendell, Jennifer Steins, Julie D'Amato, Dana Horsch, I'm sure has tons of stories regarding this. If you want to perfect the intake call, the number one thing you got to do is break this habit. Stop telling and start asking. Remember the old saying, telling ain't selling. And selling is creating value. The only way that you can create value is to ask. So when that patient calls, you got to ask. Ask everything in the world, because your ultimate goal is to bring that patient to the real realization of what's going on. If they're asking you, what do you charge for a crown, and what do you charge for cleaning, all those kinds of things, if you give them the price, they may not even need a clean, they may not even need a crown. You've got to ask these questions to have them come to the proper realization of what it is that they actually need. Second thing is, your takeaway here is you got to perfect the intake call. The first step of that is stop telling and start asking. Second thing you got to do is record every single intake call, because this is a habit that is hard to break. I know that you feel like you're helping, People in healthcare feel like they want to help. So when the patient asks a question, they want to answer and they think they're helping. So did my buddy. The patient calls and says, what do you charge for an XR60? He wants to help. Well, here's the price. And the guy says, thank you, and calls right down the line, right? You lose the opportunity. You're not helping. So you got to, number two, you got to record these conversations, every single one of them, so you can learn what's working and what's not in terms of helping you break the habit to start asking the questions so that you can bring the patient to the proper realization. The number three big thing you got to do is you got to set aside time to walk through these recordings and coach and coach and coach. Listen, you're never going to be able to fully remember what happened in that phone call with everything that you had going on throughout the course of a day. But when you've got it recorded, and when you got the opportunity to walk through that recording with somebody who is supporting you in this, somebody like us, somebody like whatever on your team, right? You need to have somebody time set aside on a weekly basis, at least, if not daily, on the front end of this, so that you're maximizing this. Part of setting aside time for coaching is also making sure that you're tracking. You want to know that here's how many new patient calls we had. Here's how many of those we actually converted. Now, of course, the other step of the tracking is, out of those that we converted, how many actually turned into patients who accepted the full treatment plan. But for our purposes on the intake call, part of that set aside time for the coaching is you have to know the information. How many people called? How many of those actually scheduled, and how many of them showed up? How many of those that called did we actually convert? Number one, stop telling, start asking. Number two, record every single call every single day. Number three, set aside time for that coaching on a regular basis so that you can develop new habits by walking through those recordings and talking through your tracking. There's no reason in the world for you to spend more dollars going after having more patients call to practice when you've already got all these patients that are calling to practice. All we need to do is maximize that. And that's how you maximize your dollars. The interesting thing that you're going to find out is by walking through these steps on a regular basis, you're not simply maximizing the marketing dollars that you're spending. Guess what else is going to happen? The patients are going to come in under the proper realization. That means they're in a buying mindset. Your treatment acceptance is going to go through the roof as well if you're doing the other parts that we talk about on a regular basis by creating value chairside and walking through that financial. If you want to know, there are basic steps. I gave you three things. Stop telling, start asking, record every conversation, and set aside time for coaching. If you want to know the proper steps, we've gone over them in the past, but if you want me to send you a PDF of exactly how you should go about stopping the telling and starting the asking and the actual steps of what we call the LAMS process, if you'll reach out to us, I'll be more than happy to send that to you. You can find us at thecrabtreegroup.com. Is that what they need to do, Mr. Producer? Find us at thecrabtreegroup.com and then reach out to us. We'll be glad to send it to you over an email, and that way you'll have it. If you have any questions or concerns, we'll be glad to share that with you. Eric, Wendell, Jennifer, Julie, Dana, Jenny, Sandra, thank you so much for joining me today. Two things before we go. Number one, don't forget about the PDF. If you want that, please reach out to us. Or you can just leave us a message right here. Just leave us a message and we'll send it to you, right? Just leave us a message, we'll send it to you on the PDF. Second thing, if you've not already joined our closed Facebook group, I want you to go fill out an application for that. There's a couple of quick questions and it goes through the moderator. But go to, find us on Facebook at Dental Profits and join our closed Facebook where we cover weekly things at a much higher level that we don't do anywhere else. I'd love to have you be part of that community. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a great hump day, and I hope it's beautiful where it is that you are. This has been the Dental Profits webinar series, the show that's all about once a week live right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, the show that's all about you having happier clients, better results, and making that money and enjoying the ride. I'm Sean. I'll see you next week.